great honor and pleasure to be here today. Arrived yesterday from Germany, and it's especially great to talk after Michael because he underlined so many of the things that we believe in VW. So I have the pleasure to introduce to you how VW is now approaching the new world. But let me start with maybe my personal incentives to that one. Most of you are probably familiar with the film that's running in the background now, where we can see what our Earth is going to look like in somewhat 70 to 80 years if we do or if we do not miss our target to having a 2 degrees Celsius increase in temperature. And to me, this is a very personal film as well. I talked to Roger Atkins in Amsterdam last year about it. I have 4 daughters, and the little one is 4 years old. And this gives this whole movie a very personal touch because I realized when looking at it that I know people who will have to live on that planet at the end of that movie. And that's something that really drives me in my everyday work. And this is why it's so much fun and why we are very passionate in our department to make that change happen within one of the biggest automobile manufacturers in the world. First of all, this is the why for VW. So we have been the company that has been starting the diesel crisis. And for me, it's really a great time to work in that company because this situation has sparked off a lot of movement, has facilitated a lot of change, and especially as the top management changed with Dr. Dies as head of the board now, we have somebody who is fully committed to that paradigm shift that we underlined, and that is underlined in the Paris Agreement. So what's so special about VW? This is what we see as the sectors and their influence on the emissions of greenhouse gases. And for VW, the situation is somewhat a little bit special because we know that we are having a lever on roughly 1% of the global emissions of greenhouse gases. And we have a lever on 2 sectors. So we are part of the industry who's emitting while producing the products. And of course, our products are a major emitter of greenhouse gases. And that's why we are acting on both of these fields now. You can see the power plant in Wolfsburg. This is currently being transferred from a coal-fired power plant to a natural gas-fired power plant. And that, to me, showed a little bit how deep that change goes within the company. Because usually we as car manufacturers are always being looked at for our fleet consumption and for the amount of carbon dioxide we emit with our fleets. So it doesn't help that target at all to modify the power plant. Still, it's being done because the management believes that we really have to do something to stay ahead and stay competitive. And that leads me to the next slide. George Kell, who's probably to a lot of you familiar, is the spokesperson of the VW Sustainability Council. And he pointed out actually why we should do this and why we should do the change. And that's what Michael mentioned before as well. Of course, the primary target of a company is to stay alive, to stay profitable, and to stay competitive in the market. And the firm belief is, with the fast changes that are upcoming now, we have to lead that change in order to stay competitive, and we have to lead that change in order to be able to facilitate and to manage that transition within the company. Because all of you have heard that the electric vehicle contains much less parts than the ICE. So all of our processes, all of our production, all of our associates will be affected by that change. And that means we really have to act early because a company of 600,000 people is not changed within 1 or 2 years. So the management is now really facing that change. And this is somewhat the timeline that we are looking at. We heard that it's a sneeze coming up and then you're actually sneezing and the market had changed. So for us, the target would be that by 2050, we will have an emission-free fleet on the road. That might sound quite far away, similar to the movie we had in the beginning, But when you look at automotive cycles and the timeline that we have around that, it's right around the corner. So if you look back 10 years, that's what a vehicle is on the road. So by 2040, we would have to stop selling cars that actually have emissions in order to realize the emission-free fleet by 2050. So if you look at the cycle of an automotive platform, that's like 2 times 7 years, right? So that's 2040 minus 14. So that's somewhat in the middle of the 2020s. And then you take the cycle or the time you need to develop the platform, then it's right around the corner. So we have to start the change right now, and we have to start transforming the company right now in order to achieve that target without jeopardizing the future of the company itself. And for me, this is a great sign that the VW top management has taken on this challenge, and that we are now shifting people from jobs that might not have a future to jobs that have a future. The whole company is in a very, very, very big transition, and it's managed actively. And that gives me great confidence in the future of my employer, and probably my kids can work there in the future as well. We're referring to Michael's presentation as well. What drives me personally in believing that we are actually betting on the right technology? We had the comparison to the hydrogen car, and this is something that I continue to present as well to people, that in the past we have always looked at the consumption of a vehicle, an ICE, with regards to liters. And in Germany, when I talk about e-mobility, people keep telling me, where should all the electricity come from? We will use so much more electricity. That's a big, big problem. And well, we actually did the mathematics, and we realized that the German electricity consumption, if we put 1 million electric vehicles on the road, will be increased by 0.4%. So it's interesting to actually take the figures, write them down, and look at the facts, and realize that we should discuss about energy consumption and not electricity consumption. So I've done the math now in gallons, so this is not my everyday figures, but 1 gallon of gasoline would contain roughly 40 kilowatt hours of energy. So with your ranges here, that would take your ICE about 30 miles, right? The e-vehicle, the ID.3 that we're presenting, or that we presented on the IAA, goes 155 miles on the same amount of energy. And this is what really struck me when I did the calculation first, that actually with the same amount of energy, I can get somewhat 4 times the outcome, right? I can get 4 times the thing I need with investing in the same amount of energy. And that kind of efficiency for us is really the way to the future, to increase wealth and to increase comfort without actually increasing the energy consumption or keeping our level of living with a massive reduction of energy consumption. And if we have a look at carbon dioxide emissions, with a gasoline that would stay at 100 miles at 21 kilograms per 100 miles. And this will always stay the same, right? It's just chemistry, it's physics, that's what's happening. We compared that to the American and the European electricity mix, and we see that the same amount of energy would then, or the same mileage would take 12.5 kilograms in the US and 7.6 kilograms in the European mix. Now, in the European mix, we have a lot of nuclear from France, but the thing is that the right side will move, as Michael said, with the change in generation, the right side will become smaller. The left side will always stay the same. And that's what we are aiming at, that actually the change in the mobility is part of the change of the whole energy system, and things belong together and have to be worked at together. Now, looking at the customer perspective, we had a look at the figures as well here in Canada and Europe and in the US, and we realize as electricity is also a very cheap energy carrier, the total cost of ownership will go down dramatically, and that makes the EV very competitive for people who are actually doing the calculations, and that is similar in all areas of the world. In Europe at the moment, it's not that much as in Canada, for example, with the figures that we had. The savings that you can realize in Canada are much more than in Europe and in the US, but it's dramatic, and that's what will drive customers towards that kind of mobility. And I fully agree with Michael that the increase in comfort, that actually your own home is becoming your filling station, is very interesting and very attractive. That makes the product very attractive. And every time I talk to EV owners in Germany, they say that the thing that disturbs them most when they switch back to a combustion engine is that they actually have to go to the filling station. They have to go somewhere they don't want to go. They have to go there just to take care of the vehicle. And that's a big loss of comfort for them when they're used to just going to where they want to go and then charging their car over there. So VW has decided to make the shift. We are also discussing very openly in Germany that we don't believe in different scenarios of technology. We are fully committed to the electric vehicles. We don't believe in the hybrids. And we think this is the right way to go. That's why we are going to launch 50 new fully electric vehicles by 2025. We are investing 30 billion euros all over the world. We are transforming 2 factories completely in Germany now to only produce electric vehicles. We're also transforming a couple of factories in China, because we believe that if the mass market penetration should take place, we have to have the competitive pricing, and the EV has to come at the same price or a lower price as the ICE does. So the MEB, the modular electric build box or modular electric platform that we just introduced on the IAA will come as the base model below 30,000 euros. So we are very close to a comparable diesel already without the efficiency gains that Michael also pointed out just before. So we will put 15 million modular electric platform vehicles on the market in the first wave. And another slide showed in the past that by 2030 we will have all 300 models of the VW Group electrified. So that train is rolling, it's out of the station, and it's really going fast. Having a look at sustainability. So I mentioned the power plant in Wolfsburg that we are also modifying now with the ID.3, which will be the first model of that platform that's going to be launched. We also promise our customers that this car will leave the factory without a carbon dioxide rucksack. So the factory is transformed to run on green electricity and green energy where possible. If we have energy consumption that we cannot transform into being green, we have compensation projects that we are going into, and we are also requiring this shift from our suppliers. So our supplier for the batteries is producing in Poland, and he is required to have the full production running on green energy as well. So it's driving this market as well. It's from our point of view also increasing the demand side for green energy, and therefore giving an impulse to the market that there needs to be more generation, and that the demand for green energy is there, and that we are reliable customers that will consume a lot of green energy, and therefore it makes absolute sense to invest in that field because customers are asking for it. When we look at the use cases for the EV, it's our target to enable our customers to have green energy in all use cases. We divide them in those 4: home, work, public, and highway charging. So public would be inner city, and highway would be really the fast charging networks. We are actually offering green energy contracts now as VW to our customers in Germany so that they can charge at home, and that we also basically face customers who are changing from the ICE to the EV now with the opportunity, and they get the green energy offer with the car, and we hope to acquire people that haven't thought about changing to a green energy contract in the past, but getting that together with the purchase of the car, that this will facilitate some changes. For work, we also offer to our fleet customers green energy contracts so that they can run all their fleet with green energy. And important as well is in the public use case, we have our joint venture, Ionity, you may have heard of. It's a joint venture of the 4 big German OEMs, and that is setting up 400 high-power fast charging stations all over Europe. And that network is also run on green energy, so it's going all the way through. We have our WeCharge service. This is going to be our charging service for the customers that enable them to use their EV basically like a cell phone. You drive all across Europe with just one charging contract, with just one charging card. And at the end of the month, you get your one invoice as you are used to from the mobile phone. We have founded ELLI, a word that maybe has come across a couple of you. ELLI stands for Electric Life. So this is a subsidiary that will support our customers in installing wallboxes, in getting the green energy, and furthermore, will have more implications around the electric life, the electrification of life of our customers, because we believe that this is definitely something where our customer has demands, has questions, and where there are new business opportunities around the vehicle itself. Michael also mentioned the mobile storage, so including the EV in the energy system as an asset, of course, is a target as well, as the vehicle is sitting around most of the time still, being very low utilized. As a storage, it will have a big effect and a big value, and we are certainly addressing that as well. Same thing is happening in Canada and the US as well. So the Wallbox will be available through online channels here. We've got the so-called Cottage Cable. We just found out that actually a remarkable share of our customers are only using that one. Low investment. You can plug it into any plug, and surprisingly, the amount of energy you can transfer through that cable into the car is enough for mobility. If you're commuting into work and back, that cable can actually do the job throughout the year. And then when you go on the longer trips, you go to the fast charging stations and buy electricity for money. So all cases are covered. And that's one takeaway from me as well, that fast charging is not good or bad, and slow charging is not good or bad. That's for me one very appealing thing about electric vehicles, that the variation of charging use cases is so big, and you can adapt your charging to your daily life, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a big investment in a big charger at home when it's not necessary. People will realize that the plug will do a good job for a lot of their use cases. Talking about the Wallbox, and this is probably more addressing the startups in the auditorium and people who want to develop new ideas around EVs and want to connect. This is the Wallbox that we are developing. The target was to have an item that it's much more competitive than the market prices we see out there right now. We believe that the installation of the Wallbox and the Wallbox itself is still a hurdle that the customer is seeing, so we had to address that. It's coming with those connections, so if some of the startups in the audience want to connect to it, this is the values to keep in mind. Also, the backend services, this is going a little bit into the technology. We will have our own CPO backend managing all those Wallboxes and managing also our charging infrastructure in the facilities. So this is another step into the digital world, that our cars are now being connected with the ID3, but also the infrastructure is being connected, and someone has to manage all of that. And we see ourselves definitely in the position to have a strong play in that one, because this backend is going to be the connection between mobility and the energy system. And we believe that there is a lot to do in the future to facilitate the whole thing for both sides. Looking at the States and the mode of mobility for longer trips, here it's happening as well, same in Europe. We see many fast charging networks being set up. We also see the oil companies, Shell, BP, and the others setting up fast charging networks. So there we do see a transition in the field where the energy supply used to be for the vehicle as well. This gives us a good feeling that our customer will not be left alone somewhere in the middle of nowhere with no opportunity to charge, but things are happening there, and the availability of charging stations will be all over the place. So from our point of view, the transformation is really happening right now. We want to be ahead of that. We want to be leading in that. And we've taken our decisions. And for all of the startups around here, we will introduce a whole lot of vehicles. There will be a massive increase in BEVs all over the world, in Europe, in the US, and in China. So if you have ideas around that, now is the time. We are also looking for startups. So if you care to scan that QR code, we're happy to have contact with you and see if your ideas are matching our ideas and if we get any mode of working together, because we believe that this change is a team effort, is nothing that somebody does all by himself, but it needs a lot of networking, it needs a lot of interconnection between the bits and pieces, and this is the way for you guys to connect to us. Thanks a lot.